Hey, my friend, you found your way here, and I couldn't be happier. If this is your first visit, do me a favor, subscribe, and send this video to your friends and family. And please, tell me in which city and country you're watching. It's like a world tour without leaving my desk. Let's begin. Amelia's tablet let out a soft chime from its spot on the kitchen counter, and my eyes shifted toward it without conscious thought. One glance at the preview made my stomach drop hard and fast, like a sledgehammer smashing through drywall. I can't wait to feel you inside me again while that pathetic husband of yours is off crawling around in someone else's attic. I froze in place, a Phillips head screwdriver still in my hand, staring at the text until the words felt burned into my vision. It was from Daniel Morgan, the real estate agent who had hired me 6 months back to install a home automation system in his condo. The same man who had shaken my hand, praised my workmanship, and had apparently been sleeping with my wife the entire time. My name's David Cooper, and my trade is fixing things. Busted pipes, faulty wiring, cracked walls. If it's broken, I can make it right. But standing there in that kitchen, watching Amelia's screen fill with more notifications, I understood there are some things no one can repair. Some you don't fix, you demolish. The messages kept rolling in. They weren't just explicit, they were mocking. Details of what they'd done in our bed. Snide comments about how I was too wrapped up in my tools to notice what was happening under my own roof. And worst of all, Amelia's responses were just as filthy, just as cruel. She called me oblivious, dull, and said I should be grateful she'd ever chosen me in the first place. I set the screwdriver down with deliberate calm, walked back into Mrs. Henderson's guest room, and went right on with my work as though my marriage hadn't just been gutted. My hands stayed steady while I mounted her new thermostat, the silence between each click of the screwdriver echoing louder than any argument could. 23 years together, and I had been reduced to the punchline in someone else's disgusting joke. That night I came home to Amelia making spaghetti and meatballs, supposedly my favorite. She looked up briefly, smiling with those perfect veneers she'd had done last year, paid for from our joint account. "How was your day, honey?" she asked, her gaze sliding past mine. "Fine," I said evenly. "Just fine." I watched her glide through the kitchen, the same kitchen I'd gutted and rebuilt 2 years earlier at her request. Custom cabinets, granite counters, everything magazine perfect, just how she wanted it. Her blonde hair was pulled into a loose bun, and she looked as flawless as ever. Over the past year, I'd been quietly turning the house into a smart home hub, security cameras, motion sensors, full automation. What began as a hobby was now about to become my weapon. I flipped open my laptop and checked the live camera feeds, kitchen, living room, front door, back door, all of it streaming to encrypted cloud storage with motion-triggered recording. I'd installed the system 6 months ago, right after finishing Daniel's condo job, claiming it was for security. Amelia had rolled her eyes but didn't object. She was smart enough to play along, but not smart enough to grasp what she'd allowed me to set up. For 3 days I played the devoted husband. Made coffee in the mornings, kissed her goodbye, came home for dinner. Every other moment was spent refining the system, adding cameras, securing the network, tightening the net until there'd be no gap for a lie to slip through. Friday delivered exactly what I'd been waiting for. At 1:23 p.m., the living room motion sensor tripped while I was across town on a job. That night I reviewed the footage, and there they were. Daniel and Amelia tangled on our couch like teenagers. She wore the red lingerie I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. I sat in my basement workshop, watching my wife betray me in crystal clear high definition, and felt something cold and deliberate take root inside. It wasn't rage. It was sharper, more controlled, and far more dangerous. I copied the video to 3 separate secure servers, plus an encrypted external drive. Then I opened a fresh notebook and began writing. Daniel's habits, his clients, his weak points. His black Mercedes C-Class, his pride and joy, went at the top of the list. By Sunday night, my plan had structure. Phase 1. Gather everything I could on Daniel Morgan. His deals, his women, his vulnerabilities. I already had an edge. I'd spent 2 weeks in his condo, seen his files, his laptop, his routines. I'd even installed a bedroom camera for him, his idea. What he didn't know was that I'd set the feed to mirror to my own server. Trusting fool. Monday morning, I skipped my scheduled job and drove to Sal's Diner on Route 40. I knew Daniel met clients there every Monday at 10. I'd overheard him say it months ago. From a back booth, I sipped coffee and watched him work the room. Smiles, handshakes, the picture of charm. He had no idea he was under observation. At 11:30, he left for his car. I watched him check his phone, frown, and try the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Still dead. He popped the hood, poked around, then finally called for a tow truck. What he didn't know was that I'd cloned his key fob during the condo job and used it to remotely kill his battery connection. A trick I'd picked up online. The right tools, paired with the right mind, can do remarkable things. I followed the tow truck to Jerry's Auto on Eastern Avenue. While Daniel argued with the mechanic over the inexplicable electrical fault, I slipped around back and attached a GPS tracker to his bumper. Military-grade magnet, 3-month battery life. Perfect. I had first bought the device under the pretense of upgrading our home security system. Phase 2, however, wasn't about safety. It was about getting into Daniel's head. My aim was to make him uneasy, to have him constantly checking behind him, questioning every minor inconvenience, and wondering if unseen eyes were tracking his every move. I wanted him to feel hunted. For the next 7 days, I dismantled his routine with small, untraceable disruptions. At his favorite cafe, his coffee order came out wrong 3 mornings in a row. His dry cleaning mysteriously vanished for 2 full days. His gym membership was suddenly canceled without explanation. And the parking space he always claimed downtown was consistently occupied by a different vehicle. From my hidden camera feeds, I could see the tension mounting. He scanned his surroundings more often, clutched his phone like a lifeline, and flinched at the faintest sound. Everything was working exactly as intended. Meanwhile, Amelia's caution began to slip. She'd leave in the middle of the day for errands and return with her hair disheveled, smelling faintly of a man's cologne. She'd go straight to the shower, humming airy, giddy little tunes as though drunk on her own secrecy. I stayed in character as the attentive, loving husband, cooking her favorite meals, asking about her day, telling her I loved her, while every night I sat down to review the footage and expand the dossier on her and Daniel. It didn't take long for a pattern to emerge. Tuesdays and Thursdays they met at a cheap motel off Route 1. At least a dozen times they'd used our own home. Daniel had stood in our bedroom, used our shower, eaten from our fridge. The sheer audacity was staggering. The blow that cut deepest came from an audio clip recorded in the living room. Amelia laughing alongside Daniel as they ridiculed me. She claimed I'd never catch on because I was too busy with my little projects, and he joked that I was practically helping them by wiring the place with surveillance. "He's so trusting," she'd sneered. "Sometimes I think he's actually proud of how naive he is." That night, I stayed in my workshop until nearly 3 in the morning, refining the next stage of my plan. They thought they were playing a fool. Soon they'd learn what a simple contractor could do. I started with Daniel's career. In real estate, reputation is currency, and his was about to collapse. The backdoor access I'd left in his condo's system let me comb through his computer files. He was reckless, keeping everything in clearly labeled folders. By Wednesday morning, I found my weapon: fraudulent property images. He'd digitally erased damage, stretched room sizes, even added features that didn't exist. It was blatant fraud. I documented everything: screenshots, file backups, the works, and stored them on multiple drives. Then I sent the evidence anonymously to the Maryland Real Estate Commission, the Better Business Bureau, and 3 local news outlets, using a VPN and an encrypted email account I'd created for exactly this sort of job. Within 48 hours, Daniel's phone was blowing up. Angry clients, investigators, reporters. His license was suspended pending review. His brokerage severed ties immediately, unwilling to get dragged into the scandal. In Baltimore real estate circles, his name was already toxic. From my feed in his condo, I watched him pace like a trapped animal, cycling through frantic calls to lawyers and PR firms. He had no idea where the leak came from, chalking it up to bad timing, bad luck, or a rival gunning for him. If only he knew. But I wasn't done. With his professional life in ruins, I turned to his personal affairs. Daniel's involvement with Amelia wasn't exclusive. He had a revolving door of women, most of them married, each convinced she was special. I had the proof, photos, messages, and a neat contact list. I decided they should all become acquainted. Using fake social media accounts, I created profiles for each woman and pulled them into a private group chat. The first message was simple. I think we need to talk about Daniel Morgan. The reaction was immediate and volcanic. Within hours, they were trading screenshots, posting photos, swapping GIFs, and telling their own stories of lies and betrayal. The outrage quickly turned into collective action. By the week's end, they had formed an informal alliance to dismantle Daniel's reputation. Sandra, a divorce attorney, blasted his picture onto a Baltimore Cheaters page with a detailed breakdown of his behavior. Kara, a marketing executive, tapped her network to spread the word across the business community. But Jessica, she delivered the killing blow. A nurse at Johns Hopkins and Daniel's girlfriend of 8 months, she had a key to his condo. She used it to redecorate his bedroom, covering the walls with printed copies of every text he'd ever sent to the other women. From the camera feed, I saw him enter the room and stop cold in the doorway. For a solid minute, he simply stood there, reading his own words plastered across every surface. Then he collapsed onto the bed and broke down in tears. The satisfaction I felt was sharp, but oddly hollow. This wasn't about Daniel anymore. My focus had shifted entirely to Amelia, the woman who had thrown away 23 years of marriage for a handful of cheap, forgettable trysts. It was time to advance to Phase 3. I needed to confront them both, but it had to happen on my schedule and by my design. They had to walk away fully aware of what they had destroyed and exactly what I was capable of when pushed past my limits. I started by renting a storage unit on the other side of town and slowly moving half of our belongings into it. Important papers, family albums, my tools, anything of real worth went there. Over 2 weeks, I worked with precision, taking only the items she wouldn't immediately notice missing. The next step was hiring an attorney. Not to file for divorce, not yet, but to safeguard my property and learn exactly where I stood legally. I laid everything out. The recordings, the photographs, the messages. I told her I wanted a settlement drafted that would strip Amelia down to the bare minimum the law allowed. "This is strong evidence," my lawyer said as she scrolled through the files on her laptop. "She won't have much leverage if this goes to trial." "Good," I answered. "I want her to see what real consequences look like." Paula Harris, a sharp-eyed woman who liked to study people over the top of her glasses, gave me a long, measured look. "Are you sure you don't want to try counseling first? Sometimes marriages can be repaired." In my mind, I saw Amelia on those recordings, her laughter with Daniel, the way she mocked me like I was nothing. "No," I said flatly. "Some things can't be fixed. You have to tear them down before you can even think about rebuilding." Paula nodded. "I'll have the documents ready by Friday." But handing her divorce papers wasn't my immediate goal. I had something more elaborate in mind. On a Thursday morning, when Daniel was still reeling from the incident in his bedroom, I called his number. Using a voice changer app, I warped my tone into something cold, mechanical, and threatening. "You've been having fun with other men's wives," I told him as soon as he answered. "Now it's time to pay the price." "Who is this?" Daniel's voice was shaky. "Someone who knows everything. Your business, your lovers, and all your filthy secrets. Meet me at the Marriott on Key Highway, room 415 tonight. Come alone, or your entire client list will receive a very revealing video." I hung up before he could say another word. That same afternoon, I phoned Amelia at her part-time job in the downtown art gallery. She'd been distracted lately, no doubt worried about Daniel's sudden troubles, but she was still playing the role of a devoted wife. "Hi, sweetheart," I said in the warm, practiced tone I'd perfected over the last month. "I've got a surprise for you tonight. Booked us a room at the Marriott, just like we did when we were dating." "Oh," she replied, caught off guard. "Tonight? I was planning to... I've got errands to run." "Cancel them," I said firmly. "When's the last time we had a proper night out, just us?" I could almost hear her mind working, trying to figure out how to warn Daniel before it was too late. "All right," she said finally. "What time?" 8 o'clock, room 415, I'll be waiting." The rest of the day went into preparation. I rented the hotel room under a false name, paid in cash, and spent hours installing equipment, concealed cameras, tiny audio recorders, even a discreet speaker system connected to my phone. I intended to capture every second of what was about to happen. By 7:30 p.m., I was in the Marriott lobby, positioned with a clear view of the elevators. Daniel showed up first at 7:45, jittery and glued to his phone. He wore a cheap suit and carried a briefcase, probably thinking it would make him look important to whoever had summoned him. Amelia arrived at exactly 8, wearing the black dress I'd given her for our last anniversary. She looked beautiful and guilty as she paused in front of the mirror to check her reflection. I waited 10 more minutes before following them upstairs to the 4th floor. Even before I unlocked the door to room 415, I could hear their voices. Confusion at first, then surprise, then the heavy realization of who they were face to face with. They had found each other, each expecting me. Sliding the key card, I stepped inside. They sat on opposite ends of the bed, identical expressions of dawning horror on their faces. Daniel's briefcase lay open on the carpet between them, its contents scattered. Amelia gripped her purse like it might protect her. "Hello, darling," I said to Amelia before turning to Daniel. "And hello to you, partner." Daniel jumped to his feet, his face burning red. "Look, I don't know what this—" "Sit down," I said quietly. There must have been something in my voice, because he obeyed without another word. I closed the door behind me, twisting the deadbolt until it clicked into place. Crossing the room, I sank into the chair at the desk, my attention fixed on the two of them. The only sounds were the steady murmur of the air conditioner and the distant drone of traffic from the harbor. "So," I said, my tone controlled, "how long have the two of you been using my bed?" Amelia's eyes widened, her face draining of color. "David, I can explain." "7 months," I interrupted, glancing at my phone as if reading from prepared notes. "That's how long it's been. 7 months of lying, sneaking around, and making me look like a fool." Daniel cleared his throat, forcing out words. "Listen, man, when we first—" "Save it." I turned the phone toward them, showing a photograph taken 6 months earlier, Daniel and Amelia kissing in my driveway. "You hired me to install a security system in your condo. You knew exactly who I was. You knew exactly what you were doing." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amelia stared at the picture, lips parted but speechless. Daniel kept his eyes down, fists clenched tight. "I've got videos," I added lightly. Turning back to her, I said, "I honestly thought you were the love of my life." "David, please." Amelia's voice broke as tears gathered. This isn't how I wanted it to happen. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said flatly. "You shattered our marriage, destroyed our trust, and torched our future. You turned me into a joke in my own home." Daniel stood, trying to salvage some dignity. "Look, tensions are high. Maybe we can sort this out, man to man." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "Man to man? You really want to call it that?" I took my phone, paired it with the room's speakers, and pressed play. Amelia's voice filled the space. "Sometimes I think about leaving him, but then I remember how much money he makes. He's dull as hell, but he pays for everything. The house, the cars, my credit. I'd be stupid to walk away from that." Then Daniel's voice. "You could always take half in a divorce. California's a community property state." Amelia again laughing. "We're in Maryland, you idiot. But yeah, I could probably get a decent settlement, especially if I play the neglected wife." I stopped the recording and looked at them both. Amelia was crying openly now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Daniel looked like he wished the floor would swallow him whole. "So," I said, leaning back in my chair, "let's discuss consequences." For the next hour, I went over every piece of leverage I had. Daniel's shady business dealings, his other affairs, his financial mess, Amelia's lies, her mounting debt, her schemes to drain me in a divorce. "Here's what's going to happen," I said finally. "Daniel, you disappear. Change your number, move if you have to, but you never contact my wife again. If you do, every real estate office in Maryland gets these recordings." Daniel nodded quickly. "Yeah, done." "And you," I told Amelia, "are packing a bag tonight. Go to your mother's, your sister's, wherever. The divorce will go through the lawyers." David, wait, she pleaded, reaching for my hand. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can get counseling. We can work through it. I pulled my hand away. Some things can be repaired, Amelia. This isn't one of them. It can only be torn down. I stood, walked to the door, and gave my final instruction. You've got 15 minutes to figure out your next move. After that, I'm gone, and you're both on your own. My hand lingered on the doorknob. Oh, and Daniel, maybe don't drive that Mercedes for a while. I've heard things. I left them there in the hotel room, staring at the wreckage of their little conspiracy. As I walked down the corridor, Amelia's sobs followed me to the elevator. Back home, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat in my workshop, watching the security feeds. The house was empty, exactly as I'd left it. For the first time in months, I was alone in my own home. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like a loss. The next morning, my phone lit up with a call from Paula, my attorney. David, your wife's lawyer has reached out, she said without preamble. They're alleging she's suffering from emotional trauma and possible harassment. She wants to sit down and negotiate a settlement. I asked her what kind of settlement Amelia's side had in mind. Half of the marital assets and ongoing alimony, Paula replied. On top of that, she's accusing you of stalking her and claims you used illegal surveillance to violate her privacy. A short, incredulous laugh escaped me. The cameras were installed in my own home, I told her. Every one of them was legal. I haven't followed her or harassed anyone. All I've done is gather undeniable proof of her infidelity, and that's exactly what I told her lawyer. Paula's voice turned more deliberate. David, this could get ugly. Are you prepared to go the distance? My mind replayed the 7 months of deception, humiliation, and betrayal that had infected every corner of my life. I've been ready for this battle longer than you realize, I said. What followed was a grueling 6-month legal war. Amelia retained a vicious litigator who tried to portray me as a controlling, obsessive spouse, the type of man who, they claimed, would push his wife straight into another man's arms. They painted me as mentally unstable, accused me of violating her privacy, and suggested I posed a threat to her safety. But I had come armed for this. I had a meticulously documented arsenal. High-definition footage, recorded conversations, bank records, text messages, and sworn witness statements. Paula laid out the evidence with precision, dismantling every accusation until their arguments looked hollow and desperate. By the time we reached the final hearing, the judge's patience for Amelia's case had worn thin. Mrs. Cooper, he said sharply, you've admitted to a 7-month extramarital affair conducted inside your marital home, funded in part by joint accounts, with the primary intent of pursuing divorce for financial advantage. Your harassment claims appear to be nothing more than an attempt to deflect from your own misconduct. When the gavel fell, the verdict was decisive. Amelia walked away with the bare minimum the law allowed: no alimony, a modest lump sum, and an order to cover her own legal fees. She forfeited the house, both vehicles, and most of our savings. A restraining order barred her from contacting me directly. By that time, Daniel had already skipped town. Last I heard, he was living in a cramped studio in Philadelphia, pushing insurance policies and driving a beat-up decade-old Honda. His real estate career in Maryland was over. I, on the other hand, kept the house, my business, my tools, and my self-respect. I also kept every piece of security footage stored on encrypted drives in a safe deposit box. It was my insurance policy, should either of them ever try to cause trouble again. But I learned something in the process. Revenge doesn't deliver the clean satisfaction you expect. About 6 months after the divorce decree, I was in Towson, halfway through installing a smart home system, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. David? The voice was soft, hesitant. Amelia. You're not supposed to be calling me, I said flatly. I know, she replied. I wanted to apologize, a real apology, not the one I gave in court. I set my screwdriver down and stepped to the kitchen window, staring out at the client's backyard. Apologize for what, exactly? I asked. For everything, she whispered. For cheating, for lying, for treating you the way I did, for throwing our marriage away like it was worthless. I didn't respond. There was nothing worth adding. I know you'll probably never forgive me, she went on, her voice unsteady. But I need you to know that I understand what I lost. You were a good man, David. You loved me, took care of me, built a life for us, and I destroyed it all for— Don't call it nothing, I interrupted. Daniel wasn't nothing. He was your choice. You chose him over me, over our marriage, over 23 years together. I know, she said, voice breaking, and it was the worst decision I've ever made. I ended the call without another word. That night, I sat in my workshop, once again used for its original purpose, and reflected on decisions. Amelia had made hers, Daniel had made his, and I had made mine. I chose to fight. I chose to uncover the truth, strip away every lie, and rebuild something real from the wreckage. I chose justice instead of reconciliation, consequences instead of forgiveness. Some would call it heartless, others would call it cruel. I call it construction work, removing the rot so the structure can be rebuilt stronger than before. A year later, I was hired to install security systems for a new housing development outside Baltimore. The project manager was Sarah, professional, direct, and sharp. Early on, she mentioned she was recently divorced. Her ex, she explained, had been creatively dishonest with their finances. Once trust is gone, it's hard to put back together, she remarked while reviewing my proposal. Some things can't be put back together, I said. They have to be replaced. She gave me a small, knowing smile. Sounds like you speak from experience. I do, I answered. We started strictly as business associates. She needed someone reliable to oversee security. I needed clients who valued protecting what mattered. But as the project moved forward, our conversations became warmer. We shared coffee breaks, traded stories about betrayal, and discussed what it takes to recover from it. Sarah was nothing like Amelia. She was open where Amelia had been cunning, truthful where Amelia had twisted facts, and independent where Amelia had always schemed for control. After finalizing her divorce, she started a construction company from the ground up, determined that betrayal would not be the defining shape of her life. I could have spent years trying to take my ex apart, she said one afternoon while we reviewed the security blueprints. But I figured my time was better spent building something worthwhile instead. Two different ways of handling it, I replied. I had to tear things down before I could start fresh, I admitted. And did the tearing down help? She asked. My mind went to Amelia's desperate phone call, to Daniel's ruined career, to the months of deliberate planning and execution that had consumed me. It showed me what I was capable of, I told her, but it didn't fix anything inside me. Sarah nodded slightly. That's the problem with revenge. It's like surgery. Sometimes it's needed, but it always leaves a scar. By the time the installation was complete, we had moved past polite exchanges into something closer to real friendship. She respected my precision, my refusal to cut corners, and my knack for finding solutions where none were obvious. I respected her straightforwardness, her grit, and her refusal to let old pain infect the future. 8 months have passed since then. We're not married, not racing toward commitments, just steadily building something genuine, one honest day at a time. Sarah knows everything about Amelia, Daniel, the surveillance, and the careful dismantling of their lies. She neither condemns me nor praises me for it. You did what you thought you had to, she said after hearing it all. But I'm glad you're not still carrying all that rage. She's right. The anger is gone, replaced by something calmer, but no less certain. I learned I could be methodical, relentless, and entirely willing to destroy when pushed. But I also learned that even justified destruction extracts a cost. Creation is better. It demands hope, faith in the future, and belief that honest work can produce something that lasts. That's what Sarah and I are doing, laying a foundation slowly, brick by brick, without forcing the structure to rise too quickly. Sometimes I think about what might have happened if I'd chosen another route, confronting Amelia directly instead of staging an elaborate takedown, going to therapy instead of planting cameras, forgiving instead of punishing. But I don't regret the way I went. Amelia and Daniel had to face the fallout of their actions, and I had to prove, to them and to myself, that I wasn't the naive man they thought I was. The hotel security system I installed still runs, still records. The GPS tracker on Daniel's Mercedes has been gone for years, likely removed soon after I put it there. The encrypted drives holding every piece of evidence remain locked in my safe deposit box, leftover fragments from a past that no longer defines me. I still take contracting work, still wire homes for security, still repair what's broken. But I've learned to recognize when something can't be fixed, when the only honest option is to dismantle it and start again. Last week, a new client reached out. His wife was involved with his business partner. He'd seen my work at one of Sarah's sites and wanted his own home secured. "I need the truth," he said across his kitchen table. "I need proof." I studied him, remembering what it felt like to sit in that same chair, consumed with planning my next move. "Before we talk equipment," I told him, "decide what you'll do with that proof once you have it." He frowned. "What are you getting at?" "I mean, are you after the truth or are you looking for a weapon? They're not the same thing." He thought for a moment, then said, "I just want to know where I stand." "Fair enough. But remember, once you know, you can't unknow. Once you have proof, you'll have to decide what kind of man you're going to be with it." I set him up with a simple system, nothing excessive, just enough to give him his answers. I also passed him Paula's card and repeated Sarah's philosophy about focusing on building something new instead of wasting years on demolition. 2 months later, he called to thank me. He'd confronted his wife, finalized a fair divorce, and begun rebuilding his life. No elaborate plotting, no slow-burn sabotage, just straightforward consequences and a clean break. "Different from my approach," I told Sarah over dinner that night. "Different situation," she replied. "You did what was necessary then." "And now?" I asked. "Now you're doing what's necessary now, building instead of destroying." She was right. I'm still David Cooper, still a contractor, still a man who fixes things. But now I understand the difference between repairing and replacing, between revenge and justice, between tearing down and raising something new. Some things can be mended. Others must be replaced completely. And some, the ones worth the most, must be built from the ground up, using honest materials, steady hands, and faith in the days ahead. The cameras in our home still run 24 hours a day, storing footage on encrypted drives. Only now, they're guarding something worth protecting. Something rooted in truth rather than falsehood. Something that can stand in the open, free from the need for secrecy. These nights my rest comes easily. I no longer wake to memories of anonymous hotel rooms, pixelated surveillance footage, or the ghostly sound of my wife's laughter echoing through deserted hallways. Instead, my dreams are filled with the lines of blueprints, the firmness of poured concrete, and the satisfying weight of tools resting in my hands. Sarah often tells me I smile more now, that the hard edge in my face has softened. She says I look like a man who finally knows the distinction between erecting walls and building a home. She's not wrong. I had spent months honing the skill of pulling things apart, dragging hidden truths into daylight, dismantling deceptions, and leaving those who had betrayed me to sift through the wreckage they'd brought on themselves. It was necessary work, and at the time it felt important. But I came to see that it would never be the whole answer. The real labor, the kind that endures, comes after. It's the patient, deliberate process of creating something genuine, sturdy, and worth protecting. It's the daily choice to construct rather than demolish, to anticipate the future instead of orchestrating retribution, to place trust where suspicion once lived. And I've discovered I'm just as capable in this work, more capable perhaps, than I ever was at exacting vengeance. This morning, Sarah and I walked together through the skeletal frame of a house I'm raising on the lot beside hers. Someday it will be our home. There's no hurry, no pressure, only the steady growth of what we've been building between us. "What kind of security system are you installing?" she asked, running her fingertips along the beam that will form the wall of our future living room. "Just the essentials," I replied. "Cameras, motion sensors, smart locks, nothing over the top." Her mouth curved in quiet satisfaction. "Good. I want to feel safe, but I don't want to live caged in." No fortresses, I agreed, only a home. As we made our way back to her place, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between the house I had once shared with Amelia and the one Sarah and I are shaping now. The same hands are crafting it, the same eye for precision and quality guiding every choice. But this time, the walls rise from a base of honesty instead of duplicity, from shared intentions instead of hidden betrayals, from hope rather than fear. Not every wound can be healed, but some things can be built again, stronger, truer, and far better than anything that stood before.